Welcome back to The Deep Dive. It is Monday morning, February 2nd, 2026. And if you've been anywhere near a screen, a newsstand, or frankly just walking down the street in a major city this weekend, you know exactly what we are digging into today.
It is the story that has completely swallowed the cultural conversation. It's unavoidable.
And usually when we say something has swallowed the conversation, we're talking about, a Marvel movie or maybe a massive scandal or surprise album drop from a huge star. But this is different. We're talking about a documentary.
A documentary that has arguably generated more noise, more money, and more, sheer confusion than anything we have seen in the nonfiction space in probably a decade, maybe longer.
We are talking, of course, about Melania. The film released theatrically just this past Friday, January 30th. And look, normally when we cover a documentary on this show, we are dissecting the subject matter. We're talking about the plight of penguins or the intricacies of a true crime cold case. But today, the mission is completely different.
Right. Because while the subject is the First Lady, and we will absolutely talk about her role in the film, the real story here, the one that makes this a deep dive worthy of the name, is hidden in the ledgers. It's in the contract clauses. It's about the business of the White House and the shifting economics of the media landscape.
We aren't here to give this movie a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I mean, that's for the film critics, and they have certainly had their say. We are here to unpack the financial architecture and the unprecedented norms that just got shattered this weekend. And we've got a stack of sources that is, honestly, it's a little intimidating.
It is a heavy stack, no question.
We've got fresh box office reports from Deadline and Variety that just came in this morning. We've got scathing reviews, and I mean scathing, from The Guardian and The Hollywood Reporter. We have deep financial analysis of the Amazon deal and some pretty intense reporting on the ethical questions swirling around this whole enterprise.
And we really need to set the stage properly before we get into the weeds. It is Monday morning, the reviews are out, the box office numbers are on the board. But most importantly, the check has cleared. This isn't speculation anymore. This is a fait accompli. The money has changed hands.
So let's start with the number that made my jaw hit the floor when I first saw the headlines. This isn't just a movie release. It's a $75 million gamble. And I want to pause on that because that number is it's astronomical for this genre.
It really is. And to understand why that number is so shocking, we have to break it down. We have to deconstruct the deal. The headline that grabbed everyone's attention was that Amazon MGM Studios paid a $40 million licensing fee for this film.
Okay, I want to stop you right there. You just dropped a number, $40 million, and moved past it.
Yeah.
We need to reverse the tape. Because in the documentary world, $40 million isn't just a high number. It's imaginary. It doesn't exist.
It really doesn't. You're right to pull the emergency brake there.
Yeah.
To understand why that number is so aggressive, we have to look at the standard business model for a documentary. Usually, if you are making a high-end doc, let's say something for HBO or Netflix, something with high production value, you are looking at a budget of $2, maybe $3 million.
And that pays for everything. The cameras, the travel, the editing, the music rights, the whole shebang.
Everything, the whole shebang. If you hit $5 million, you are making an absolute blockbuster in the documentary space. I mean, to put it in perspective, think about March of the Penguins.
Right, the gold standard.
It's the gold standard for a successful theatrical documentary. That entire film cost less than $4 million to produce. From start to finish.
So you could make 10 March of the Penguins for the price Amazon paid just to get the rights to Melania.
Precisely. And this is where the terminology gets really important. We have to clarify what a licensing fee actually is because it sounds a lot like production budget, but it is not the same thing at all.
Right, so explain that difference for us.
Yeah.
Because it's crucial.
The production budget is what it costs to get the footage on the hard drive. It pays the crew, the director, the catering, the flights. It's the cost of making the thing. The licensing fee is what a distributor, in this case Amazon, pays to the owner of that finished product for the exclusive right to show it to you. In this case, reports from the Wall Street Journal indicate the production costs were totally separate. This $40 million was essentially a transfer of wealth to the rights holder for the finished product.
Yeah, and the rights holder is
Melania Trump. Or, more specifically, a corporate entity controlled by her.
So wait, let me get this straight. This isn't Amazon giving her $40 million to make a movie.
Yeah.
The movie was made. This is Amazon paying $40 million just to be the ones to put it in theaters and on Prime Video.
Correct. And that brings us to the most eye-popping figure in that Wall Street Journal report. They indicate that of that $40 million, Melania Trump personally pocketed $28 million.
28. million. Directly to the sitting first lady.
Directly. That is her personal profit margin. She made the widget, the movie, for a certain cost, and she flipped it to Amazon for a massive, massive profit.
We have to pause on that because it fundamentally changes the nature of what we are watching. This isn't just a subject agreeing to be filmed for posterity or for history. This is a business transaction of the highest order.
It's a commercial product. She is the vendor. Amazon is the buyer. Plain and simple.
But why was the price tag so high? I mean, I know she's a person of high interest, obviously. She's the first lady. But $40 million. Was there a bidding war or something?
There was a massive bidding war, and this is where we get into some fascinating corporate intrigue. It wasn't just Amazon sitting at the table. You had Disney in the mix. And according to reports, Disney offered somewhere around $14 million.
Okay, stop. Disney offers $14 million. Now, that is already a huge number for a documentary.
It is. That's a very respectable, even generous offer. In any other context, we'd be talking about how huge a $14 million deal for a doc is.
Right. But then Amazon comes in and nearly triples it. Why? Why on earth would they blow Disney out of the water by that much?
Well, the sources suggest it came down to two things. Price, obviously. Money talks, but also the platform. Critically, Amazon guaranteed a theatrical release.
The movie theaters.
Yes. That was reportedly a key demand from Melania Trump. She didn't want this to just drop on a streaming service on a Tuesday morning and then disappear into the algorithm. She wanted the red carpet. She wanted the marquee. She wanted the legitimacy of the cinema experience. Disney, with Disney Plus Gob, might have been looking at this as a streaming play. Amazon was willing to put it in theaters.
Which explains why we all saw it in theaters this weekend. But Amazon didn't stop at the $40 million, did they? Because you mentioned $75 million at the top of the show. Where does the other $35 million come from?
No, they didn't. And this is the hidden cost that turns this from a big deal into a mega gamble. Reports suggest Amazon spent an additional $35 million on promotion, on marketing.
$35 million on marketing?
Yeah.
For a documentary?
It's completely unheard of. We're not talking documentary numbers anymore. We're talking about blockbuster numbers. That's a marketing spend for a superhero movie.
What does $35 million in marketing even look like for a film like this?
It looks like TV ads during the NFL playoffs.
Whoa.
Do you know how expensive a 30-second spot is during the playoffs? We are talking millions of dollars for a single ad. That is some of the most expensive advertising real estate on the planet. And they bought it. They bought billboards in every major city. They took over bus stops, some of which were defaced in Los Angeles, which we can touch on later. And they held a massive promotional event at the Las Vegas Sphere.
The Sphere, that giant glowing eyeball in Vegas. They put Melania on the Sphere.
They did. Giant projections of the film's imagery. So when you add the $40 million licensing fee and the $35 million in marketing, Amazon's total exposure here is hovering right around $75 million.
Okay, so if I'm an Amazon shareholder, I'm looking at this and thinking, what are we doing? Documentaries do not make $75 million back at the box office. They just don't. It's not a thing. So what is Amazon actually buying here? Because it cannot just be a movie ticket sale strategy.
No. And this is where we have to put on our corporate strategy hats. If this were a lemonade stand, it's a terrible business. But Amazon isn't running a lemonade stand. They are running, the backbone of the internet. We have to talk about the concept of a loss leader, but on a geopolitical scale.
A loss leader. Usually that's like a grocery store selling milk for super cheap to get you in the door to buy steaks and everything else, right?
Exactly. You lose money on the milk, you make it back on the rest of the cart. In this scenario, the movie is the milk. Amazon knows they will almost certainly lose money on the film itself. There is almost no path to profitability on a $75 million investment for a doc.
So what's the stake? What's the high margin item they're really after?
The stake is the relationship. The stake is cloud computing contracts for the Department of Defense. The stake is avoiding antitrust regulation from the Justice Department. The stake is having a direct line to the White House.
So you're saying the $75 million is basically a line item in their lobbying budget?
That is the argument many ethics watchdogs and industry critics are making. It is a way to transfer wealth to the First Family's ecosystem in a way that is technically a business transaction rather than a political donation. Because remember, political donations are capped. You can only give a few $1,000s to a candidate,
right?
But you can pay their spouse $40 million for a movie. There's no cap on that.
Connect the dots for us, though, because Jeff Bezos and Donald Trump haven't exactly been best friends historically. I mean, they feuded publicly for years.
They have. It was a very, very contentious relationship during the first term. But look at the timeline recently. Jeff Bezos' Washington Post famously decided not to endorse a candidate in the election.
I remember that caused a huge stir in the newsroom, a big internal uproar.
Massive resignations. Then Bezos is seen at the inauguration, a prominent guest. And now, mere weeks later, his company is writing the biggest check in documentary history to the president's wife. It paints a picture of what some analysts are calling a corporate realignment. Amazon has massive government contracts, AWS, cloud computing for the DoD. The theory is that this movie is a bridge, a very expensive bridge.
So the $75 million might look like a bad movie investment, but it could be a very, very good lobbying investment.
That is certainly the interpretation. Of course, we have to state that an Amazon spokesperson has denied this. They gave a quote saying they bet on customer curiosity and that they licensed the film because they think customers will love it.
Customer curiosity, that's the official line.
That's the official line, but the numbers. The financial numbers suggest a very, very high-risk bet if it's purely about box office receipts.
Well, speaking of the movie itself, let's talk about how this thing actually got made. Because the production story sounds just as wild as the financial one. You mentioned earlier the word chaotic.
Glossy, chaotic, and controversial are the three words I keep seeing in the production reports. It seems to have been all three.
Let's start with the director. Because when I saw the name attached to this, I did a double take. I honestly thought it was a typo. Brett Ratner.
Yes, Brett Ratner.
I feel like I haven't seen his name on a movie poster in years.
Oh, dear.
And for our younger listeners or people who don't follow Hollywood Inside Baseball, who is Brett Ratner?
Brett Ratner was a massive director in the late 90s and 2000s. He directed the Rush Hour movies with Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker.
Huge hits.
Huge. He directed X-Men, The Last Stand. He was a commercially successful, big-budget action comedy director, a major player.
So why hasn't he worked since 2017?
Because he was one of the central figures in the #MeToo movement's reckoning in Hollywood. 6 women came forward with serious allegations of sexual misconduct. He has denied the allegations, but the industry effectively exiled him. Warner Bros. Cut ties with him. He hasn't directed a feature film since.
So how does he, of all people, end up directing the official documentary for the First Lady of the United States?
It's the question everyone in LA is asking. Reports from Variety indicate he was the only person considered.
The only person. Not like a short list, just him.
That's what the sources say. It implies a personal connection or a specific preference from Melania herself. But bringing him back into the fold created a very strange dynamic on set. We have reports from Rolling Stone and other outlets describing the production as highly disorganized.
I read one anecdote that just sounded like a logistical nightmare, something about crew members being stranded.
Yes. This is a story that has been circulating among crew members. They were filming on the Trump jet, the 757, the one with all the gold plating.
That iconic plane.
They fly somewhere to film, they land, the principal photography for that location is done, and the crew is reportedly just left there.
What do you mean left there? On the tarmac?
No rides home, no ground transport arranged back to their hotels or the airport, just sort of stranded on the tarmac. It speaks to a production that maybe wasn't running with the precision of a typical Hollywood studio film. It was running on personality and perhaps a bit of chaos.
And what about the film itself? What are we actually watching? Because for $75 million, you expect something spectacular.
The premise is very specific. It covers a 20-day window just before the 2025 inauguration. So it's this very contained transition period. Melania herself has described the visual language as cinematic, emotional, and fashionable.
Fashionable is an interesting descriptor for a documentary. Usually you hear gritty or revealing or hard-hitting.
Fashionable is the key word. Critics are using different words. They're calling it a shameless infomercial. One review in The Guardian called it gilded trash.
Ouch. That's harsh.
But the thing that really stands out to reviewers, and frankly, to anyone paying attention, is the music, the soundtrack choices.
Oh, the soundtrack. I've heard about this. It's supposed to be wild.
It is bizarre. And I want to dig into this because it tells us something really important about the editorial control.
Okay, walk us through the playlist. What are we listening to?
One of the featured songs is Gimme Shelter by the Rolling Stones.
Great song. An absolute classic.
Incredible song. But do you know what it's about?
It's about the Vietnam War. Right? The darkness of the late 60s.
It's about war, rape, and murder. The lyrics are literally, Rape, murder, it's just a shot away. It is a song about societal collapse and violence.
And this is playing over footage of, what, Melania trying on dresses for the inaugural ball?
Exactly. It's playing over glossy, high-fashion montage shots. It's an almost surreal level of dissonance.
That is a choice, a very strange choice.
It gets weirder. Another song prominently featured is Billie Jean by Michael Jackson.
Okay, a song about a woman claiming a man is the father of her child and the man vehemently denying it.
The kid is not my son.
Considering the various legal and personal controversies that have surrounded the president over the years, putting that song in the official documentary.
It's mind-boggling. And then to top it off, you have Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fears.
Which is almost too on the nose to be real.
Right. It creates this tonal whiplash that critics have really latched onto. It feels, according to reviews, like a playlist of songs Melania just happens to like on her iPod, without any regard for the lyrical meaning or how it fits the narrative at all.
But she had control over this, right? This wasn't some editor going rogue in a basement somewhere.
That is the crucial point. We have to keep coming back to this. Melania Trump is a paid executive producer. She had full editorial control. She controlled the narrative, the footage selection, the framing, and yes, the music. So when you see these choices, the music, the shots, the specific scenes, you have to understand that this isn't journalism. This is curated image making.
Which brings us back to that $28 million. She was paid a fortune to produce a movie about herself, starring herself, controlled by herself.
Exactly. It's an unboxing video of her life, but on a $75 million scale.
So the money was spent, the movie was made, it hit theaters this weekend. Now we have to play Monday morning quarterback.
Yeah.
Is it a success or a flop?
That is a complicated question. It depends entirely on who you ask and which metric you use. Let's look at the raw numbers first from Deadline. As of today, Monday, February 2nd, the film has grossed $7.1 million globally.
$7.1 million.
That breaks down to $7 million domestic and a tiny, tiny fraction, about $78,000 internationally.
Wow. That international number is brutal. I mean, usually Hollywood relies on the international box office to make its money back.
It's non-existent. It's a rounding error. But the domestic number, here's the spin. It finished third at the box office for the weekend, and it is actually the highest opening for a non-concert documentary in a decade. It beat the projections, which were set at 2 to 5 million.
So technically it outperformed expectations.
Technically, yes. If you are grading on that curve, it did very well. Trump is already on Truth Social calling it a selling out smash hit, and if you compare it to Chimpanzee from 2012, it's a record breaker.
But I sense a very large but coming.
But you have to compare the revenue to the investment. Amazon spent $75 million to get this into theaters. A $7 million opening weekend is catastrophic if you are looking at it like a traditional movie investment.
Break down the math for us. Why is that so bad?
Well, usually a movie needs to make back 2 or 3 times its budget just to break even because the theaters keep about half the ticket money. So for Amazon to just break even on $75 million, they would need this movie to gross somewhere around $150 to $200 million.
And it opened at 7.
It opened at 7. It is not going to make $200 million. It's not even going to make $20 million.
So financially, as a standalone product, it's a bomb.
A huge one.
A massive bomb. But again, if it's a loss leader, maybe they just don't care. Maybe the box office was never the point.
Who actually went to see it? Do we have the data on that?
We do. The exit polling and audience demographics are fascinating. We know exactly who showed up this weekend. 49% of the audience identified as Republican. Only 2% identified as Democrat. Wow. That is a stark divide. I mean, usually even political movies cross over a little bit.
Not this one. This was a partisan event. And the demographics skew heavily female 72% and Caucasian 74%. So that cusp of curiosity that Amazon was betting on, it seems to have been limited to a very specific slice of the electorate. It didn't cross over. It didn't become a cultural event for everyone. It became a cultural event for the Magi base.
I want to talk about the reviews, or the lack thereof, initially.
Yeah.
Because there was a blackout, right? The press wasn't allowed to see it.
Yes, there were no press screenings. Usually, if a studio is proud of a film, if they think they have an Oscar contender or something, they show it to critics weeks in advance. They want the buzz. They want the New York Times raving about it before it opens. Amazon withheld this until the last minute. Critics had to buy their own tickets on Friday, like everyone else.
That is usually a very bad sign.
It is almost always a sign that the studio knows the reviews will be bad. And they were. But now we are seeing this fascinating online warfare. If you go to Rotten Tomatoes right now, the critic score is sitting at 9%.
Single digits. That's down there with, like, Cats. It's a total bomb with critics.
Right. But the audience score, 99%.
That's statistically improbable. Even the best movies of all time, The Godfather, Shawshank, they don't get 99%.
It's the definition of a polarized reality, but it's also clear evidence of review bombing and reverse review bombing.
Explain that for listeners who don't spend their lives on movie forums.
Sure. Review bombing is when a coordinated group of people flood a site with negative reviews to tank a score, often for political reasons. Reverse review bombing is the opposite, flooding it with 5-star or 10-star reviews to inflate the score. We're seeing this on Letterboxd and IMDb too. People are swarming the sites to give it 1s or 10s without necessarily even seeing the film.
So it's not even about the movie anymore.
No. It's become a proxy war. The movie itself doesn't matter. The score is just a way to vote for or against the administration. The actual quality is irrelevant.
So the box office is a mixed bag. The reviews are a battlefield. But I want to zoom out a bit because you mentioned earlier that this shattered norms. We have had first ladies write books. We've had them do interviews. We've had them appear on Sesame Street. Why is this so different?
It comes down to two things: the timing and the money. Historically, there is a very strict, albeit unwritten, rule in American politics. You wait until you leave the White House to cash in.
Right. Michelle Obama wrote Becoming, and that book made millions. But that was after the presidency was over.
Exactly. Laura Bush wrote her memoir after. Hillary Clinton wrote hers after. You serve the public for 4 or 8 years, then you enter the private sector and monetize your experience. Melania Trump is monetizing the East Wing while she is still living in it.
That's the distinction. It's the while.
She is using the backdrop of the presidency, the actual locations, the staff, the transition moments, as content for a commercial product that she is personally profiting from in real time.
And that's legal. How is that not against some kind of rule?
This is the surprising part. Yes, technically. The First Lady is a private citizen. She's not a government employee. She draws no salary. She takes no oath of office. So legally, she can sign a deal with Amazon. She can sign a deal with anyone she wants.
But ethically?
That's where the red lights start flashing. We have quotes from Don Fox, who was the former acting director of the Office of Government Ethics. He was very blunt about it. He said it has the appearance of a bribe.
The appearance of a bribe. That's a heavy term.
It is. That's the term he used. When a company with billions of dollars in federal contracts hands a massive check to the president's wife, it looks transactional. Even if there is no quid pro quo, no explicit deal, the appearance creates a massive conflict of interest.
And it's not happening in a vacuum. We have to talk about the context of this weekend.
Yeah.
Because while Melania was walking the black carpet, it is a black carpet, right? Not red.
It was a charcoal-colored carpet, very on brand for the aesthetic of the film.
While she was walking that carpet at the Kennedy Center, which I should note now bears Donald Trump's name.
Which is another controversial detail, the renaming of the center.
While all that was happening, the world outside was looking very, very different.
It was a true split-screen moment. You had this glossy, high-fashion premiere with guests like Tim Cook, Mike Tyson, Queen Rania of Jordan.
Tim Cook was there, the CEO of Apple?
He was. Again, you see this corporate alignment, tech CEOs paying homage. But while they were sipping champagne in D.C., there were massive protests occurring in Minneapolis regarding a Border Patrol shooting. The country is in turmoil over this specific incident. And internationally, the film was actually pulled from theaters in South Africa due to distributor issues that many are linking to political strain.
And did Melania address any of this? Did the movie?
Briefly, she did an interview with Fox News where she called for unity and an end to riots. But the contrast was jarring. You have a documentary that is focused on fashion and restoration of the White House, literally about fixing the drapes, debuting against a backdrop of serious civil unrest. It reinforces the criticism that the film is completely detached from the reality of the country.
I want to play devil's advocate for a minute, because I know what some of our listeners are shouting at their speakers right now. They're saying, wait a minute, the Obamas got a massive deal with Netflix. They made millions. Why is everyone freaking out about Melania doing the same thing with Amazon?
It is the most common comparison, and on the surface, it looks like a slam dunk argument. Former First Family, big streaming service, big check. But if you look at the contracts, if you look at the deliverables, they are fundamentally different business models. They are not the same thing at all.
Okay, so break that down. What is the Obama model?
The Obama model, via their company Higher Ground Productions, is a production deal. They are acting as studio executives. They find a filmmaker who wants to make a movie about, say, a Chinese glass factory in Ohio that became the film American Factory.
Great documentary, by the way.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
Incredible film. It won an Oscar. But the Obamas weren't in it. They weren't selling access to their breakfast table. They were using their clout and their platform to get other people's stories funded. They are producing a whole slate of content, kids shows like Waffles plus Mochi.
Right, the puppet show about vegetables. My kids love that.
Exactly. Or Crip Camp about the disability rights movement. They are content creators. They are using their global fame to tell other people's stories or stories about important issues like labor or disability rights.
And the Melania model, how is that different?
The Melania model is an access deal. She isn't producing a slate of films about other topics. She is licensing herself. She is the product.
She's the intellectual property, the IP.
Exactly. It's much closer to the Kardashian business model than the Obama model. And the key timing difference, the one that makes ethics lawyers sweat, is the when.
The timeline.
Michelle Obama wrote Becoming and signed the Netflix deal after they moved out of the White House. They were private citizens in the truest sense of the word. Melania Trump negotiated, signed, and released this deal while her husband is the president-elect and now the sitting president.
She is monetizing the transition itself.
She is monetizing the visuals of the government. When you see her in the film walking down the colonnade or packing up the East Wing, that isn't a set. That is federal property. And she is using that federal property as the backdrop for a commercial product that puts $28 million directly into her personal bank account.
That is a fascinating and crucial distinction. One is producing content, the other is licensing a persona.
And the financials reflect that. The Obama's deal is for a massive amount of work over many years. Melania's deal is $40 million upfront for one documentary and a follow-up series. The price per minute of content is astronomical compared to almost anything else in the industry.
So we've talked about the money, the ethics, the comparisons. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of the film itself. You mentioned the music. But what are people actually seeing on screen for nearly 2 hours?
Well, according to the reports, and remember, I'm relying on the reviews here because the critics have done the heavy lifting, it is a mix of the mundane and the carefully staged. There are scenes of her packing up the White House.
Literally putting things in boxes.
Literally packing.
Yeah.
There are scenes of her advising Donald Trump on his inaugural address.
Oh, really? What was her advice?
She urged him to strike the tone of a peacemaker and unifier.
Which is an interesting piece of advice given the current climate.
Very. But there are also moments that critics have really pounced on. There is a scene where she is watching coverage of the California wildfires on TV.
Okay, a very serious event.
A national disaster. And the criticism specifically from USA Today and The Hollywood Reporter is that she looks completely unbothered. She's just watching these disasters unfold with the same expression she has when she's looking at fabric swatches.
So no emotion, just watching disasters unfold with no reaction.
That's the critique. That she remains an enigma, a preening, scowling void, as one reviewer put it. The film focuses heavily on her supporting cast, her stylist, her interior designer, and her chief of staff. It's about the aesthetics of the role. Restoration is a big theme. Fixing the furniture, getting the drapes right.
It sounds like it's trying to return to a very old school idea of what a first lady is supposed to be. Just the hostess, the decorator, the silent partner.
But with a modern, high-gloss filter. And that's why some critics are using words like propaganda. There were comparisons made, and these are very heavy comparisons, to Triumph of the Will or The Birth of a Nation.
Wow. Those are the nuclear options of film criticism.
Yeah.
Triumph of the Will is Leni Riefenstahl's infamous Nazi propaganda film.
They are extreme comparisons, for sure. But the argument the critics are making is that the film is pure image rehabilitation without any journalistic integrity whatsoever. It doesn't ask hard questions. It doesn't show the chaos behind the scenes, except for, the unintentional chaos of the production itself. It presents a hermetically sealed world where Melania is beautiful, the White House is gold, and everything is fine.
Even if the world outside is burning.
Precisely. And that disconnect is what makes this such a fascinating cultural artifact. It's a $75 million argument that style matters more than substance.
So let's try and wrap this all up. We have a record-breaking financial payout for a sitting first lady. We have a critical panning but a box office curiosity that energizes Pacific base. And we have this massive blurring of governance, celebrity, corporate interests. What is the big takeaway here?
I think the takeaway is that the monetization of the presidency has entered a completely new phase. It's no longer about waiting for the book deal or the speaking tour after you leave office. It's about real-time capitalization. And Amazon's role here is critical. They have normalized the idea that a tech giant with massive government contracts can directly fund the personal wealth of the first family while they are in power.
It opens a door that I don't think we can easily close.
I don't think we can. And it raises a final provocative thought for everyone listening. If a sitting First Lady can essentially star in a $75 million infomercial funded by a corporate giant, have we entered a new era where political figures are treated and compensated strictly as entertainment IP?
As intellectual property.
Exactly. Are they public servants or are they franchises? Are they policymakers or are they content creators? And if they are franchises, what does that mean for the future of political transparency? Because you don't expect transparency from a Marvel movie, you expect entertainment. If politics becomes just another content vertical for Amazon, we lose something vital in our democracy.
That is a terrifying thought to end on. But it's a question we absolutely have to ask. The movie is out, the money is spent, the precedent is now set.
And we are all just the audience now, watching it unfold.
Thank you for listening to this deep dive. We'll be watching the box office numbers and the ethics reports very closely this week.
Indeed.
See you next time.